Well, hello, friends and neighbors. John, your whiskey neighbor here, and welcome down to the Whiskey Nook here in my basement. It's another Saturday, and as I said, I'm going to try to review a little more Canadian. So today we're going to look at another smaller craft distillery. This one's from BC, and we're going to look at their Western Grains release. So this is Goodridge Williams. They're from Delta, BC, and this, as I said, is a blended Canadian whiskey. Bourbon barrels, 40%. Well, we'll talk more about the whiskey when we get back. So be my thoughts on Goodridge and Williams Western Grains.
3, 4.
Thanks. I don't know if you can hear it on this mic, but just above me, main floor, my daughter is practicing for a high school musical that's, I don't know, it's Elvis Presley. I mean, everyone's dancing to Jailhouse Rock right now is going on above me. That's too funny. Anyways, back down to the basement and some whiskey. So as I said, this is a Canadian whiskey, and it's a smaller craft distillery again in Delta, BC. It's really just south of Vancouver, if you're trying to get a kind of a sense. And not enough information on here, but some, right? Clearly says bourbon barrels, Western grains, 40%. You look it up online, and consensus is that it's got everything in there, right? It's got corn and wheat and barley and a bit of rye, all mashed up. Now, I can't tell. I'm just about to say something that I don't know. Lots of Canadian whiskeys actually distill grains separately, age them separately, blend and marry, and release a blend. For these guys, I don't know what they're doing. So if you do, let me know whether this is a mash bill or whether it's more typical for Canadian where they're blended separately, like everything separate and then blended, married, and released. 40% and no language to say otherwise, I'm going to assume that this is both colored and chill filtered. So this deep, rich, copper color, I got to think it's some E150. But let's talk the whiskey. Let's see what it is. If you have some Canadian, any kind of Canadian, I think, pour along and see if it's similar or if it stands out a little bit different. Let's go on the nose. Very sweet nose. We've got honey, toffee, light sweet nuts, a little bit of fruit, but actually at this point they're a little bit cooked because of that strong caramel toffee note for me. A little bit of sweet vanilla. Okay, nose for me, all kinds of sweet. Now it's inviting, doesn't put me off with alcohol, there's no astringency, no marker quality, gentle, sweet. Let's try the palate. Cheers. Really pushes into that. Lots of caramel. Different types of caramel. Kind of like a hard crack Werther's, but then a chewy unwrap of caramel. Really, for me, that is a big part of this whiskey. Better have another sip to try to get out a few more layers. A little bit of cooked fruit in there. For me, it's like a mashed up pear or applesauce. So it's been broken down a little bit. It's not fresh, it's not crisp, but there is a little bit of applesauce pear. Lots and lots and lots of caramel. That nut in the nose continues in the palate. There's some little bit of nut in here that I like. I'm not sure if that's kind of barley or where that's coming from, but there's a little bit of nut quality for me. Not overwhelming, but nice. Finish is a little short, but clean. Not a lot of oak throughout this entire experience. It's tasty. Reminds me again of 40 Creek. I know I use that as a benchmark, but 40 Creek Copper Pot to me almost is a benchmark of standard Canadian, fairly sweet profile. Oh, and I'm glad I gave it a third sip. Just a wisp of spice. Possibly rye, possibly casking, but not a lot of cracked pepper on the tongue, not a lot, none of that, but just a little bit of, a little bit of spice. Nice spice, welcome spice. You can actually see I'm pretty deep into this bottle, and I've had it open for quite a while. And the reason for that is when I first opened this bottle, I really didn't appreciate it very much, and I wanted to give it as long as I could before coming to you guys and sharing, because, you know, it's a craft distillery, and I don't know if they have a lot of people talking about their whiskey or not. In this case, there's one element on here that I haven't shared, and that is a little bit of artificial sweetener. I get that with some whiskeys, more Canadian than any other style, but it's almost like this little bit of Diet Cola, right? You know, when you get that little bit of aspartame, something like that going on, and I get that a little bit with this. That said, caramel on here is really strong and quite nice, and I would suggest if you tend to like Crown, 40 Creek, that kind of Canadian profile, I actually think you'll quite like this, because I suggest it's a little creamier, definitely stronger caramels for me, so worth a try. I'm going to give it a star value, maybe 3.5. I think it's a quality product. It's got a lot of NOx, low 40%, probably colored, probably filtered. And again, it's a profile that personally I'm really not chasing right now in whiskey, but actually I think it's a decent, it's got some quality marks going on. That's my thoughts. I'm going to clear my palate, and I'm going to compare it to Rupert's, which I did last week. All right, like I said, I like to compare if I can, if I have it on the shelf. Why not? So last week, I reviewed Rupert's whiskey from Eau Claire, a local distillery, not that local, but just outside of Calgary, so close to my home here near Edmonton, Alberta. And lots of things that I like in this one, right? The idea that they are also small. According to them, even though it's 40%, on their website it says non-chill filtered and a natural color. Now, I want to believe everything they put on their website, so I assume natural color. Awesome. Non-chill filtered at 40% is extremely rare. It definitely means, like today it's minus 27 or something outside, that just being outside is going to make that bottle cloud right up. I mentioned in the review, that I really know about their horse farming, and they do a ton of barley. And I said, wow, this kind of tastes like corn. I wonder if it's barley. Since then, a number of comments have come on the channel and said it's probably all barley. Interesting. Let's try to shoot it now in comparison to the Goodridge, because I think they're going for a very similar style. In this comparison, this one is a little dustier. It's got a little corn husk. Whether it has corn or not, it's got that kind of husky note to it. Yep, definitely. And now a little bit of maraschino cherry right there on the end. Try the palate. Overall, less sweet. And in this sitting right now, I'm kind of liking the less sweet. But the early finish gets a little bitter, gets a little tannic for me, and keeps me from really liking this little metallic water, I think is how I described it. There's something in there that kind of goes a little metallic for me. Lots of layers of different sweet honey. And even more caramel. I'd go on a limb and say these guys must be using some really fresh first fill ex-bourbon barrels. I have no idea about that, but it really, to me, tastes like that explosion that I think you get from a nice toasted ex-bourbon barrel. I still stand a little bit saying that I prefer the Goodridge and Williams Western grains to the Rupert's. It's just a little bit nicer for me, but in some ways both similar. Definitely, even though this one has all 4 grains blended in it, and this one as an unknown, some people have said all barley. I find that hard to accept, but they have a very similar profile. All right. Well, I hope if you're in Canada and you see these and you like that flavor profile, that you give either of them a try. And if you're in the US, one day I hope at least the single malt from Eau Claire makes it down south, because that is some really great stuff. Thanks for staying with me. Hope you guys have a great week. If I can, I will, of course, try to shoot the sample Sunday. I'm really getting into that rhythm, but I feel like I should try to shoot even another one, or maybe release it midweek or something. It's a struggle to find the time to be with you guys, not a struggle to want to find the time. Thanks for tuning in. You guys have a great week.